матче. Да нет, давай в этой геометрии матче. Давай. Ты делай, как ты делаешь.
Okay, guys, we're recording. So the debate is addresses the statement affirmative action is a good public policy. So we'll start with person 1 and 2 on the disagree team. You can go ahead and come up.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the first person of our group, so let me state our group opinion, which is against the affirmative action. Affirmative action is the policy of favoring members of a disadvantaged group who suffer from discrimination within a culture. We think that affirmative action is a form of reverse discrimination. It is unfair and injustice. We can't give a group of people privilege just because of their ancestors had suffered from other groups. For example, there were also white people who fought for the rights of black people. Is it fair to put them in a bad position? If we are trying to fight against racism, should we use a way that looks good, but it's in fact a new discrimination? Or find out the truth or origin of racism and eliminate it? Also, I think someone may think that we should pay back to those races that were persecuted in the history, and we must fix the history. However, the history will not be fixed. The reason will not be vanished by simply giving our privilege. Managers of segregation and the chance of discrimination can only be destroyed if we have a good policy. That's why I'm pretty sure that the affirmative action is not removed.
Okay, we'll switch over to the other team, person 1 and 2.
What about comments?
We'll do that after. Yeah, after this part. Andrea, you want to pull your head down so we can see your nice slides?
Hi guys. Should I start?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Full question. First of all, full question. Have you ever thought about time machine? Maybe you can. Some people think that it's impossible. However, on the other hand, some scientists said that it will be possible in 20, 30 years to make time machine, but it can go only further in the future. What about past, guys? What about just, I wish, we would have time machine and you could go to days of past and, for example, your first driving experience or first kiss, maybe. However, for example, we could go back to Mississippi or Louisiana or Georgia, 1850s or Texas, and see real slavery of how white people torturing innocent African Americans. Like, nowadays, let's go to 1961 when Kennedy he got this brilliant idea of affirmative action, and actually this idea that led us to affirmative action makes African American society much better than it was, and fixing mistakes. And how Hackett said, it's impossible to fix the future, to fix the past, but actually it's possible with affirmative action. Of course, in some ways it's unfair, and you could say like, yeah, this guy got to college, and he had like lower score than the white guy, but we just, yeah, that's what we need just to do. Like it's called payback, payback. Even now, like black people just they can't cross the street, right? Because like policemen or white people think, oh, this guy is drug dealer, but that's just because he's black. But why? And yes, of course, there are like people like they had this gangs and stuff, but that exist just because we treated black people class, but it's just they're equal. We need to treat them like brothers, brothers. What's the point of this thing? We we
You just finished up, Andre, okay?
yeah, I need to finish up. So what I want to say is that affirmative action, the things that we have to have nowadays, that we need to even improve, and also the African American society and group is it's non-dominant, so um, we kind of need to put it on the same level as us and live together in peace. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. We'll go ahead and move on to the question and answer, the first session. So I'll give team, team disagree on this side. 1 minute to pose questions to this team. Okay, go ahead, Kakit.
And as you said, we should fix the history. But history is, like, they discriminate black people, but now the affirmative action is the discrimination of white people. We can say like that. And discrimination is treat different groups of people unequally. And that policy is exactly what discrimination before.
But they can't say
question,
anything.
though? What's the question?
They can't say anything.
So
We're saying.
you're supposed to ask a question, and they're supposed to answer.
Yeah.
That's what we're waiting for. Question.
Yeah, but how that fix the history?
Fixing the history with like I said, affirmative action. So we put African American group on the same level as us and treat them equally.
Yeah, but
And what you said that it's the discrimination of white people. However, it's not. And it just how I said, in some ways it's unfair. For example, with this college that I said, like, but still, like, where you don't find discrimination of white people. Look at this, what's happening now.
Okay.
There is no
Even
discrimination
because
at
we
all.
put back in a bad position, but now we put white in a bad position.
No, well, just show me. Just like, every day in America, African Americans are like they killed, they tortured on the streets, even by police. Like, where is have you seen white people like dying every day on the streets?
Yeah,
but it's just accidents.
Okay,
it's just a car crash or
I'll
something. But
can I interrupt?
I'll give you an
I want to let the team ask one more question. I think Anne had her hand up. Okay, go ahead, Anne.
Just that I put everyone like in the others and put everyone at the same level, but affirmative action actually put the black people like they have that problem, so it's not the same level. So what do you think about that? And also you think like the black people are bad, but it's the value of the people, it's not the policy. So actually, it's the media give us or other things like education, media give us that kind of value instead of the policy. So it shouldn't be like it's
No, like,
not the same thing.
oh, wait. I'm just there.
Can I let Andre to let someone else on your team respond, maybe?
Oh, please, I just had a point. Okay.
Okay, Mahonja wants to respond.
So I think the history of slavery may have already passed, but like the history of racism has not passed yet. Like the white American also, like some of them still have racism towards the black people, and because the black people are in the racist position, so they have like lower income, lower healthcare due to this kind of thing. So I think it's fair to have this affirmative action to them.
But if you have the affirmative action,
It's the second question.
Well, let me stop you there. But let's let this team have a chance to ask questions to the other team, and then Danielle will come back to you. Go ahead, Vlad.
I have a question. I think Kakit said that we should forget about history, because it was in the past. But how? Wait. I haven't asked my question yet. But so you honestly believe that we should forget that people who like there are a couple of African American people in this school, right? And you think that 200 years ago that they were slaves was okay? And we should just forget
the history. I haven't mentioned that. And I said we cannot fix the history by making another mistake.
Well, also look at the history.
No, that's why affirmative action was created.
Yeah,
It's fix
to
the
avoid
history.
discrimination.
Yeah, but
I
I
can't
think
fix
that's a
You can't fix it, and actually it's we need to like because if you just leave it
You
like
can't
this,
come back in the future, in the past, and then bring all stuff.
but you get but
Yeah, but
now it's
present.
continuous. You see, like
Affirmative
it's huge discrimination.
affirmative action has discrimination against the white people, so they will think like because of black people we have like this kind of unfairness. So they will think they were like more hatred towards the black people, so it can't solve any problem.
But without it, black people are at direct disadvantage because like we've seen from the video, we've seen from other sources, people maybe they don't say it up front, but they will usually, if given the choice, they will usually pick a white person over the black person with the same credentials. So this just gives the black people an opportunity to, to get into that college, to get that job. Because like Mr. P mentioned, that there was the same credentials and two names, one black name and one white name. And I think 80 or 70% of the time, the white name got more responses than the black name. It's just
Yeah,
pure
but
statistics.
so what you said is we make the school to pick the black person. But that's also unfair.
Okay, guys, we'll stop it there. We'll have another couple of sessions for question answers.
Good,
Some good exchanges there, but make sure everyone gets a chance, okay? Let's go ahead with person 3 and 4 on, 3 and 4 on the disagree team.
And I do first. Three.
Yes.
Sorry, do I on myself to this space? Or? Okay, can I start? Okay, hello fellow students. Imagine for a moment yourself in Geneva Airport. You just arrived in the airport with your family and you feel safe about family and about yourself as well. You get on the plane and the plane is preparing to take off. You fasten your belt. In seconds you're in the air flying to your back home country, to Ukraine or whatever, wherever you live. So you're feeling comfortable and in seconds the plane suddenly starts to go down. Oxygen must drop. And then, let's take a step back then. Maybe you died, maybe you stay alive, no one knows. Let's take a step back from this horrible nightmare. Who do you want to have as your pilot in that situation? A highly skilled person who was professional, who was accepted in the pilot school because of his outstanding knowledge? Or do you want to have someone who was accepted at the same pilot school because of the affirmative action and his worldly skills? Do you want to have the best pilot, or the second best, or the third best, or the fifth best, or the 100th best? I think you want to have the first best. I think you trust the first best, right? And your safety is more important than everything, and it's more important than the idea of affirmative action. Moreover, the global safety is more important than affirmative action. All people need to have the same rights everywhere in order to make a perfect and equal, safe society. The ongoing debate is the result not of conflicting interpretation of data, but of conflicting ideas of justice. Which brings me to something else we can pretty much agree on. Affirmative action doesn't make people equal, and it disapproves the social justice. I think you should make a better choice if you want to save your life. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Person 4?
Hello, students. I want to present you some data about affirmative action and how it affects our society. First of all, I want to mention that affirmative action is considered to be a set of procedures which prevents unlawful discrimination. And our team believes that this policy is not working fully correctly. My data shows that in 2008, a girl named Abigail Fisher from Texas tried to apply to University of Texas at Austin, and she got rejected because she was in a 10% best, but some black and Hispanic minorities get accepted because of their race. So she sued the university and said that that's the violation of the Equal Protection Clause, which is the document of US government, the official document. And she also mentioned that that's the violation of citizens' privilege of US. And eventually court decided that that's actually true. And after that, she got accepted and the other guy was expelled. Another evidence is that, according to my data, college admission can add from 150 points to 300 points in SAT scores out of 2,400, which is about 13%, which gives you serious advantage among other students. So, for example, if you're applying to any university and you have the same amount of knowledge as, for example, Spanish speaker, you're less likely to be accepted just because he's a Spanish speaker. And the university don't want to be considered racist or something like that. Another data shows that in 2011, Asians got the best payment for the same amount of work time and the same job. So for example, if you have Asian waitress, white waitress, black waitress, and Hispanic waitress, the top paid one was Asian. And then the reason is just, he's Asian. Is it fair to get less money just because you have a different color skin or just because you have a different heritage? And also, I want to mention that the violation of Equal Protection Clause is a violation of the law. And it means that the affirmative action actually promotes the violation of law. So US tries to do equal society, tries to maintain equality in its society, but gives an advantage to some minorities group, which means that they're violating themselves. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, person 3 from other team. Whenever you're ready to move.
Good morning, guys. I'm here in order to prove that affirmative action should exist. And I'll give you an example of individual who suffered from discrimination and started off the civil rights movement. Everything has begun on 1955, when Rosa Parks, a black American woman, was on the public transport and refused to give up her seat in the colored section of the bus to a white passenger. As a consequence, she was arrested and fined in the amount of $14. As you know, in that time, it was a big amount of money. This information says the Weekly Newspaper of Boston. This action became an important symbol in the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks was the person who gave black Americans the motivation to start fighting for their rights. Therefore, she made it possible for the start of affirmative action with regards to black citizens. The purpose of affirmative action was to prevent existing discrimination all over the world. In addition to it, as you may know, before the affirmative action was imposed, black people were treated with inequality. They were discriminated, segregated, killed, punished, arrested, fined for simply having a different color of skin, whereas white people lived a sweet life. They could not even use the same facilities that white people could do. For a long time, they had to live through unjust laws that limited their lives and made them less valuable than the white. Our group stands for affirmative action because it tries to equalize the rights between everyone, and discrimination should not exist. Even Barack Obama said that with the help of affirmative action, he got into school, graduated, and became president of US. Thank you.
Good example. Greatest person in the world.
He was being disrespectful, and he lost professional.
Are you person 4 or are you person?
Person 4.
What about Sean, person 5? Okay. Go ahead, Jermaine.
Good morning, my friends. Historically, as we know, women and black people have been badly discriminated. And nowadays, we run affirmative action to provide these groups of people with education and workplaces. In my opinion, affirmative action is a reasonable payment for centuries of racial discrimination and oppression. Today, I want to present a recent case study from a news article. For the last 50 years, the numbers of women who are studying in high schools rocketed, and therefore, now the number of female students in high schools is more than men. This is clear evidence that affirmative action works. In a perfect society, policies like affirmative action would not be needed. But this isn't a perfect society, and we need to make amends where possible. Now, I want to refer to Patrick's question. Affirmative action should not be based on race of the person. It should focus more on socioeconomic status, so that it will be equal for every person. Students from ethnic minority backgrounds require a helping hand, so that they can enjoy the type of privileges that they are typically ignored by other races. The process behind affirmative action is to encourage all deprived students to enter an advanced educational system. Despite the success behind the affirmative action rules, racial discrimination remains in schools and even in the workplaces. If affirmative action was removed, it will be more possible that the inequality against the ethnic minorities would increase again, and the case of prejudice will start to rise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, I would like to offer a minute or two for this team, preferably someone who hasn't asked a question yet, to ask a question and then let them respond. I think Daniil and Jenna had their hands up before.
Yeah, and okay, you first, you're lady. I'm very respectful.
Affirmative action.
Yeah, I think that racial discrimination is a way. No, not racial. Affirmative action is a way to pay back what happened in the past. But if this was into action, which our society trying to stop racism, yeah. And by having affirmative action, will create a new form of discrimination towards the white people.
But yeah, so that's a good question. So I mean, firstly we have to pay back for the discrimination. I mean, for at least for 10 years more, and nowadays we started to governments of U.S. started to focus more on socioeconomic status, which is your economic wealth. So now, like they won't in the future there won't be segregation between black people and white people. There will be segregation between rich people and poor people. So we're making equality now. I think it's not now. There is a decrease in discrimination.
And can I add it to your question? The affirmative action was not imposed in order to discriminate white people. It was imposed in order to equalize the rights between black and white. However, it doesn't work well yet. But the government still is working on it.
I don't think it's the best option.
I don't think
But there is no better option.
How do you know?
Why do you think it's not the better option?
How do you know?
Black people were killed, but now, do the black kill white people or what?
Like wait, even now there's discrimination of black people, even now.
And there's discrimination of white people,
Nowhere!
Vietnamese,
There's
everywhere.
discrimination of
Discrimination of Kazakh people and Kyrgyz and like.
Where is the discrimination?
We're talking about global discrimination. Not talking about like one guy whose name is I don't know like Jorge, yeah, like somewhere in Spain who's sitting on his plantation. I don't know. There's a group near him who like torturing him. No, we're talking about black people, like African American society, like in global way. You know, we're talking about this. We're talking about
Hold on, I think Lev had a question.
A quick question. You said that we cannot fix history and we need to repay back the historical suffering that blacks were going through. Does it mean that Germans should do something for Polish people? Because during the They're
No,
not
they're not
doing
doing
anything.
it. No, Germans
You're
don't-
saying that we need to
What?
repay
Germans-
back
Germans-
history.
Germans have to.
Let me
We're talking about African American people. We're talking about.
Why don't Americans pay
What
for
about
the
Polish?
last
Yo,
wars
no,
that
no,
they
you're
get
not
to
talking about
wear?
Polish.
Yeah,
Don't go from team to team.
Pay for the wars, pay to Vietnam. Go out,
Let's talk about
Yemen.
Ukrainian Bush. I like Ukrainian
Go
Bush.
out.
Let's talk about this. We're talking about African American society. Let's talk about
Wait,
about
Andre, let him finish his point. There is a point if you're asking about repaying back. Is there a precedent for paying back? Gleb, did you want to finish your thought? And then we'll turn it over to the other team.
Doesn't mean that every single war that happened needs to be repaid back. I mean, for example, Russia had a war with France. Does it mean that Russians have to repay back something to French people? They're not doing anything, and does it mean that we have to? Polish people are not getting any help from Germans, and I don't see the actual point, the connection that binds the repayment to black people because of their suffering. Everyone suffered, but that time is gone, and the equality needs to be established. And the affirmative action gives a privilege to black people in order to raise them among the white people in terms of selection or applying to university job and so on and so forth. Doesn't mean that it's fair. That's what you're trying to say.
Sure. Okay, I'll let you guys ask questions. Okay.
I want to.
Let's
I want a question, though.
okay, Urta hasn't had a chance.
So like usually the history cannot
You can address it.
but like and they cannot fix the war that happened, but actually people like they're paying back, like for example, like Germans they had to like lower the number of like their soldiers in their army. So if affirmative action is not an option, so what other options do we have to like?
Give equal rights to everyone. I mean,
That's what we're trying to do.
no, it's not.
Give equal rights to everyone.
Oh my God, slow down. What's
affirmative action, equality, people to be equal, but that's what you want to say.
Andre, I'm going to censor you. Give them a chance to respond. Give them a chance to respond. Okay. Somebody. Natalia hasn't had a chance. I know she wants to say something.
Affirmative action
You're
is
next.
not equality. It gives African Americans more rights than to white people, so it's not equality.
If you are black,
So
what
what
option
option?
is?
Okay, so how do you think we should? Do you think we should pay back for like slavery and all those time?
But there are some white families that actually helped slavery, so why should they pay for other people's mistakes? And an option would be if every school in the U.S. had the same level of education, then we wouldn't need affirmative action because black people and white people would have the same amount of knowledge, and so they would have better grades. Everyone would get more or less the same grades.
Okay, your mic's on. Go ahead.
Why are you comparing affirmative action with the war? In a war,
What?
left said, in a war, there are two sides, and they both have guns, and they are fighting for the victory, right? And here in affirmative action, in the past, there was a slavery, and black people that didn't have guns or anything like that, they were unarmed, and the white people had arms, and they were killing them. So that's completely different.
But I
In
did
my
not
opinion.
mention
No,
war.
I'm responding to that question.
I mentioned it and I'm gonna answer. The first thing, your main argument about why affirmative action is fair is that it's a historical thing that blacks were treated in a bad way, that they were slaves, and so on. But does it mean that it changes something nowadays? The society changed. Does it mean that if Polish people were under control of the Nazis, they were in concentration camps? Does it mean that we need to put something like privilege to Jews just because they were suffering during the Nazis?
Yes.
Objection.
Yeah.
Objection.
We have to put, as I said, as a payback. Like, for example, I'm just,
Why don't
I'm
you
just giving you are back.
Okay, so the main example of yours is right that Germans not paying anything to Polish, right? This example is flawed though. Germans still have millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of reparations to pay the whole Europe, including Poland. They're repaying their debts. I don't understand what your point is based on. They do repay their debts.
What kind of repayment? They're improving their infrastructure. They're building
Yes.
roads for Polish people in Germany.
Yeah.
No, they're paying them money.
There are war reparation
They're
payments.
war reparations.
Yeah. I don't know the details.
I'm sorry, guys. We just
Okay.
don't get a point.
Let's move on. We'll come back to one more question and answer session. Thank you for your heated debate. Let's move on to persons 5 and 6 from the disagree team.
Они детей не понимают, просто европейский развод.
Okay. Let's focus on the speaker, please. Question.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm arguing the intellectual, logical appeal against affirmative action. We live in a society where white and black people should be treated equally. Because what happened in history should not influence us to support reverse discrimination or discrimination of any other kind. But to learn from our mistakes and try to do better. People might think affirmative action is the best choice, but this is not going to lead us to victory, but create a loop that will keep on going round and round. Our job in society today is to fight for equality, justice, unalienable civil rights, and equal opportunities for everybody. In addition, everyone on our planet is created equally. We should not judge people on how they look like or what race they come from, because in our society this should no longer matter. Furthermore, our society is trying to abolish racism. So by having a preference to black people, this will reverse the roles and people will feel resentful. And this will create a new form of discrimination against the white people. In conclusion, simply by having people of different races or ethnicities in a workplace or university, this does not necessarily mean diversity of opinion. People with the same skin color are not necessarily the same in opinion or even culture. Thank you very much.
Vlad has a question.
Okay, person 6. Okay.
Hello everyone. I want to restate our group's opinion. We strongly agree that affirmative action should not be considered as a favorable policy. It is important to remember the history in order to correct the mistakes. Affirmative action seems the way of emancipation of the black people. However, it is actually following the track of an overthrown career. Instead of discrimination against the black people, now it is the injustice towards the white people. You might say that affirmative action promotes a better equality. However, could any one of you dare to say that every single black individual belongs to the disadvantaged group? It is actually a stereotype towards the black people. I'm sure that some black people are in a disadvantaged group. That being said, there are also some white people in the disadvantaged group. Is it called justice to ignore those white people's civil rights? Affirmative action should not regard the race or the income, as Bill already said. It will lead to a better equality instead of another form of discrimination. Furthermore, affirmative action causes some talented black people to lose what they deserve, and they should not be blamed for the faults that are not done by them. The state of nature has the law of nature to govern it, which obeys everyone, and reason, which that law teaches all mankind who wealth becomes soil, that being all equal and independent. No one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. Natural rights of the black people are definitely unalienable, and so are the white people. Thank you.
I think Shion was person number 5, so I'll just go with the person number 6. Okay.
I can read this part if you want.
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah, I've got it on my iPad here. Thank you, Anne.
It's unfair. You're gonna be better than Shion.
Hi, everyone. I would like to reiterate why we believe affirmative action is needed in today's society. Logically speaking, there are several advantages of affirmative action. First of all, despite the success behind affirmative action, racial discrimination remains in schools and even in the workplace, especially in the United States. If affirmative action was removed, it would be more possible that inequity and inequality against ethnic minorities would worsen. And the case of tribal prejudice and color blindness would start to rear its ugly head. Secondly, a diversity in the workplace and school will always remain desirable, and it should be persuaded by all means necessary, since it will not occur naturally or by chance. And most significantly, the students with merit from the ethnic minority backgrounds require preferential treatment so that they can enjoy the type of privileges that are typically ignored by other races to them. The policies behind affirmative action encourage all students who have been deprived entrance into jobs, into educational systems, should be given these policies. Thank you.
Thank you, John. May I start?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the group over here, I think, in my opinion, this point is very easy to sympathize with. You know, that we have this perfect society where everyone is equal. Asian people from Asian origin, or very Asian origin, African American people, and why that we have all this figured out. But this is not true. Going back into history, like Andre said before, into 19th century, there was an extreme. I think America was probably the country in which it was implemented the most, slavery. We used to, especially in the South, white people treated black people like slaves. And I know this is not the case right now, but still, like we looked in the video, like we've seen in the video, and many other examples in literature and real life, people of African American origin are still discriminated against. And given the opportunity, given the equal chance to choose someone, a person will usually choose a white person over over a person of another origin. And going back to the point of history, I understand that it might not fix it, but it will still account for it. Another thing is environment. Statistically speaking, black people in U.S. come from poor neighborhoods. This is how it has been historically. This is how it has historically originated. That there are several. I think in Detroit, New York City, there are several neighborhoods where black people live, and most of them come from there. And since in U.S. The money dedicated to school come from taxes, and poor neighborhoods pay less taxes, that means that those schools will receive less money, and this means that the majority of people graduating from them, the vast majority of people graduating from them, will have worse education. These are just the facts. So it's just logical, at least at this point, to have some kind of system to account for that, some kind of system to maybe add those 50 or 100 points to their SAT score just because of the statistically disadvantaged situations. And then another point, I've heard a lot of, I think several of you said that affirmative action against on gender basis is bad, but then on income basis it's okay. The thing is, though, like we're arguing for affirmative action, you're arguing against it, and by just saying that, even income-based affirmative action is still affirmative action. You just supported our points. I think it was 2 or 3 of you. You basically just took our position. So I believe that based on those arguments, our points, and the fact that a couple of you support our opinion, it's obvious that affirmative action should and will be working in present and in future.
I'll open it up for one more question and answer session. I'll let anybody go, so go ahead, and you had your hand up first.
Because recently this debate is based on the race, not the income, so I support if this debate is based on average general thing about affirmative action, maybe I will stand on your side, but because it's on the race, so I stand on this side. So it's, yeah.
just addressing that point. Your the title of the thing is for or against affirmative action. It doesn't specify what affirmative action is. You just chose for yourself. You just in your imagination you chose that it's going to be only about racism. I think most of you did. But the thing.
Because Mr. Cooper told me.
I did say the debate was designed about race as an issue, as the main issue of affirmative action. But that's okay. I mean,
Okay, I was interested because it wasn't specified anywhere like in the written form.
yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Fair point. Go ahead, Kake.
But imagine you are white and I know you're competing with a black person which you can Cornell and he got accepted because of the policy and you didn't do things fair.
Yes, I would. Judging by all the facts and judging by all the facts, and I mean, of course, personally, I would be maybe a little bit offended, because I might have had better scores. But right now, with all the education that we've had on the affirmative action, I think most of us can say that this is what is working right now, and none of you, I think, have presented a thing that would an alternative, a working alternative that would supplement it in
I did.
in this round.
Yeah.
Which one?
I said that it's the system, the educational system in America works like, okay, rich neighborhoods have better education, like you said, right? But if they took this money and gave some to the more poor neighborhoods, they would have an equal quality of education, and then the poor neighborhoods and the rich neighborhoods would have the same amount of knowledge, therefore the same SAT scores, for example. That was my solution. Thank you.
Invest in the money, not in the money in education of the black people, and not giving them like a great opportunity to study in Stanford and all this stuff.
And also is that if you are not accepted by the college because of the affirmative action, you will feel a little bit like upset about that in your mind. And if every white people have, not every, like some white people have this situation, and they feel, all of them feel a little bit upset, and it will lead to a bigger problem, and they will think because of race they don't get to that college. And actually, the black people hope the society is colorblind. So the affirmative action is not colorblind. And also in the video, the one of the black people, he told to the people like he hoped everyone is judged by his characteristic instead of his color. So I don't think affirmative action is colorblind and is not working.
No, it's not. We're not saying that it is colorblind.
Yeah, and also like it's not equal at all. And if you use racism to solve racism problem, it's not gonna work.
But the thing is, like, you're talking about a perfect society. Of course, if we had people who, like, for example, if you got your application from a black person or for a white person, and you would have no prejudice whatsoever to which one to pick. But it has been proven by many examples that people do have that prejudice. So you have to account for that. You have to, at least for now, I think, because I like Natalia's point that we redistribute the money throughout schools, but that will take time. People who are in 11th grade right now, that redistribution of money through schools is not going to help them. People who are in the first grade, they will, but it's 10 years time. Right now, affirmative action is working. I think just to account for that prejudice, to that racism that people still have for black people. I mean, it might not stop racism, but it will definitely help African American people get the opportunity that they would not have otherwise.
Okay, guys, I think we got to finish up here. Thank you for all your thoughts. Maybe we'll have to read Natalia's extended essay because it sort of addresses some of the things that you guys were mentioning. Let's finish up with the disagree team, person 7 and 8, and then the agree team, person 7 and 8. Thank you for your sharing your thoughts.
Good morning. Okay. May I start? Okay. Picture this. You are a kid and you're hanging out with one of your best friends. He loves getting into trouble. He loves it. However, you obviously don't. He suggests that you two go play to your old grumpy neighbor's house? You say no. However, he goes alone anyway, and he ends up breaking the window. He puts all the blame in you. How would you feel? Affirmative action is giving the consequences of a horrible historical event to all white young adults of this generation. Most of them have had no connection with slavery or racism in their families whatsoever. Nevertheless, they're still harmed by it. Some of their families even fought for the emancipation of the slaves, but they're still harmed by affirmative action. A racist past cannot be undone with more racism. Racial preferences have promoted discrimination instead of debunking it. Affirmative action is reverse racism. Affirmative action is discrimination. Affirmative action is injustice, and this is why we should not adopt this system within our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Frank?
Whenever you're ready. Affirmative action is morally wrong. It is an unjust and also irresponsible policy. Everyone in this world must be equal, and it is unalienable. No matter what level you are in the society, how poor you are, or what race you are. Affirmative action is for sure a form of reverse discrimination. The devil is in the details. So if we can slow down and really think deeply about this, it is easy to figure out that the concept hiding behind the affirmative action is vicious. We must deal with the racism instead of giving privilege. It is a poison that coated with sugar. It promotes discrimination. Also, affirmative action treats people in the wrong way. It treats the rich as poor. It treats poor as rich. It treats minorities as majorities, and also they treat majority as minorities. This is a huge mistake. The mistake that should not be made. Our eyes are sharp, our ears are sensitive, our brains are clear, our judgments are accurate. We cannot make this mistake, and we surely will not. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Hertha, and then Monica.
So I'm going to summarize what my group members have already mentioned, but I will talk about affirmative action that is not only based on race. So we understand that not all of the people they're discriminating someone, but we still think that discrimination is really important issue and it is pretty common. So we think that affirmative action is a great solution to injustice. First of all, we should look back to our history and slavery issues. And we have to pay, maybe not to pay back, as you said before, but we think that somehow it should not happen again, like, you know. And this is why we use affirmative action, because we want to make sure that mistakes made in the past wouldn't happen again. But affirmative action is not necessarily based on Afro-Americans or on race. So, for example, let's look back in the history when white women they didn't have any rights. They couldn't wear pants. They couldn't get normal good education. They couldn't have jobs. But because of affirmative action used in the past, now they have good education, and that leads to increase in economy and healthcare. Also, not all of the people could afford good education. So imagine if some people are born and they're like super super smart, but they cannot afford going to good school. So if you're not from good school, you won't get good job because it's just how it works in today's world. And so we think that affirmative action is a great solution because our society should be more mixed, and we should, as we see in the movie, how people react to like discrimination of other people. So we think that we should tolerate each other and respect each other because after all, we are like one big family in this world.
Thank you. Okay, Mangsa.
Why are you on this? Why are you on this side? All Chinese are here. Is it discrimination?
Okay, go ahead.
To conclude, I want to say that everyone ever wanted this situation to be is to have the equal chance for everyone and change their current situation. But it won't work if there's no affirmative action to prevent this vicious circle. I'm agree with the policy of affirmative action only when there is no more racism and no more extreme poverty in this world. But long before that, the affirmative action is the one and only method to keep this world in its right place. We cannot just say that if there is reverse racism, therefore the affirmative action must not exist, and ignore the fact that it will divert the groups of people extremely due to the current situation. Because this is not about the ethical theory, but about the reality. Furthermore, the history of slavery may have already passed, but no one can deny the existence of it. And the point of remembering this history is not about to make up the mistake that other people did in the past. And it's about, but it's about to remember how they get so far and so wrong, and also why we cannot let it happen again. Based on that, we must have the affirmative action. It will not harm the more ability group by that much, but it could literally save many people from the other groups. After all, as the previous explanation from others and myself, our group's great creed is that the affirmative action is necessary to balance the still existing racism and poverty all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mangsa. Thank you, everybody, for your debate.